Another thing that I'd like to mention is that a real advantage, perhaps, of being last is that oftentimes just about everything's been said, but not everyone has had the opportunity to say it. And so a number of things that I'm going to say have actually been touched on by my two colleagues up here, but I think it is important to kind of reemphasize that for some of you that may not be as familiar with this topic, perhaps, as others here in the room. So what I'd like to do this morning is just spend a few minutes providing you a context and to elaborate on the context of the energy-water nexus. I'd then like to really kind of focus that on the important role of the energy-water nexus and its impact on the future of Texas. I will bring that down to a few comments relative to the nexus and how it impacts San Antonio, Texas. Come on, work with me here. And then finally, what I'd like to do is actually provide a few remarks and comments about the important role that the energy-water nexus can play in addressing the challenges and opportunities associated with the production of oil and gas from shales, particularly those located in South Texas overall. So all of us, I think, recognize that the world's surface is greater than 70% of the world's surface is covered with water. And at first glance, many of you may say, so what is the problem overall? And I think National Geographic, as much as anyone else, I think really brought credibility to the issues around water. Whenever anything is published on the cover of National Geographic, you can assure yourself that it's a national issue or an issue of great importance. Fresh water is a limited resource. 2.5% of the Earth's fresh water is fresh. Less than 0.3% of this fresh water actually occurs in surface waters, rivers, and lakes. And on the order of 30% of this fresh water actually occurs in groundwater. And as Ed has indicated earlier, water treatment is energy intensive. And so we have those trade-offs. That's part of our challenge. From a global context, I think we all recognize that between now and about 2030, we'll see roughly a 50% increase in demand for electricity. And as I think we all are aware, here in this country, about 40% of all water withdrawn daily goes to support thermoelectric power generation, another point that Ed had alluded to. But at the same time, we can recognize that between now and 2030, we expect to see an increase in global population on the order of 30%. And with that increase in global population, we expect that nearly 50% of our world's population will live in regions of high water stress by 2030. And at the same time, we will see an increasing amount of demand on freshwater needs, and commensurate with that increase, you will also see an increase in the overall global water budget. Here in the United States, we withdraw about 80% of our water from surface waters, and about 20% of our water comes from groundwater. And of the surface withdrawals today, we see roughly 80% of that water actually is fresh. But again, as Ed has alluded to, we continue to see a marked increase in the amount of access and utilization of brackish and saline water, and that will continue to accelerate with advent of technology going forward. California and Texas clearly withdraw the most water in the United States, mostly to supply and provide water for the agricultural sector as well as the energy generation sector. And here in Texas, with the nexus, Texas consumes about 160 billion gallons of water to produce on the order of 400 billion kilowatt hours of electricity annually, more than any other state. And electricity demand and water demand in Texas will continue to increase. In San Antonio, we've been fortunate in that we have two municipally owned utilities, CPS Energy and the San Antonio Water Systems, both of which have had a strategy now for several decades to actually diversify their energy and water portfolios. And I think they've done a very good job. In the case of CPS Energy today, our generation capacity consists largely of natural gas, coal, nuclear power, and today we rely about 13% of our generation capacity is on traditional renewables, largely wind, almost 1,000 megawatts of wind. The San Antonio Water Systems also has diversified their water portfolio and continues to do so. We're very fortunate, unlike here in El Paso, where you work so hard to desalinate your water. We sit on top of a tremendous water resource in the Edwards Aquifer. The water is readily available to us. Of course, we have to treat it well. But in addition, aquifer storage and recovery programs have been in place for some time, as have programs really looking at reclaimed water, which I'll mention here in just a moment. In fact, there has been a move on the part of CPS Energy over the course of the last 40 years to really decrease the amount of water that they use for cooling of thermoelectric power generation based on groundwater. And today, they rely significantly on reclaimed water as an integral part of their strategy to go forward. In fact, this year, they actually signed an agreement with the San Antonio Water System that will authorize them to access up to 50,000 acre-feet of water, reclaimed water, to support their thermoelectric power generation in the future, which is a significant achievement. In addition, at CPS Energy, they recognize the importance of water as part of their longer-term strategy. And as part of their Vision 2020 plan, they have actually identified and recognized reducing water as an integral part of that. Between now and 2020, CPS Energy is expected to have on the order of 1,500 megawatts of renewable energy generation capacity that provides electricity to the San Antonio area. And that's expected to actually reduce the need for about 21 billion gallons of water. In addition, as part of this program, they have also identified 100 megawatts of non-wind generation renewable capacity, largely photovoltaics, which is expected also to reduce the energy or water demand on the order of 6 billion gallons. My expectation, living in San Antonio now for the last year and a half, is that we will exceed those commitments. We are in the process of finalizing a commitment to actually deploy up to 400 megawatts of solar photovoltaics to support the San Antonio service area over the course of the next 5 years. And we have a very active energy efficiency program, and as Ed has indicated, if you don't use energy, if you don't use electricity, then you can conserve the amount of water that's required to support that activity. We also have what I call a facility, the Dos Rios Water Recycling Center, that is actually implementing the Nexus in Texas. And some of us may think that's a line dance, but it's very real in South San Antonio overall. San Antonio itself, a little known fact for those of you who never journey to the west or to the east, San Antonio produces on the order of 140,000 tons of stuff every year that goes through their water recycling center. 140,000 tons of stuff. I'm not sure what they do in El Paso, but that's a lot of stuff. 90% of that is recycled and sold commercially. In addition, today we produce biomethane gas from biodigesters, and we actually sell that on the spot commercial market. And San Antonio Water System receives a royalty from the sale of that gas. We recycle on the order of 10 million gallons of water a day, and currently we are in the process of actually constructing 20 megawatts of new solar photovoltaics on the Dos Rios water treatment facility site itself. Let me turn now from an emphasis in San Antonio and the nexus that's occurring there to really talk for a moment and provide a few comments about the potential of shale gas and oil and its relationship to the energy-water nexus. Many, in fact, perhaps several in this room would consider this to be the next source as a bridge to the next global energy transition. These shale gas and oil reserves or reservoirs are located all over North America and all over the world and provide tremendous opportunity, perhaps, for the future. The Department of Energy's Energy Information Administration, in fact, has frequently, in fact, revised their estimates of the production of unconventional sources of natural gas. And today you see a significant increase in the production expected of unconventional natural gas over the course of the next 10 years. Data from several states around the country, Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and others, substantiate those estimates with proved reserves over the course of the last 3 years. In San Antonio, we sit just to the north of what I think to be perhaps one of the more prolific, evolving oil and gas shale plays in the country, perhaps in the world, at least at the present time. It's called the Eagle Ford Shale. And to give you a sense of the activity and the development in the Eagle Ford Shale, in 2008, there were 34 drilling permits issued for drilling in the Eagle Ford Shale. In 2009, there were slightly less than 100. In 2010, there were slightly less than 1,500. And between January and July of this year, nearly 3,500 drilling permits have been issued for that part of San Antonio, South San Antonio, and the Eagle Ford Basin area itself. Tremendous impacts on all the communities in that area, and as you can imagine, very close connections to the challenges associated with water. I should also point out that if you look at production volumes of both oil and condensate from the wells between 2009 and 2010, you'll see a factor of 5 increase in the production of oil and the production of condensate from these wells in that region. So it's a very prolific area and one that we expect to see expand in the future. With that resource, it's critically important that we stay focused on sustainable development. And to develop these regions in a sustainable manner, it's critically important that we manage the interactions between energy supply, economic prosperity, and responsible environmental stewardship overall. But to give you a sense, we expect to see a marked increase in oil and gas production driven largely by technology. The technology associated with hydraulic fracturing and the technologies associated with directional drilling, which have advanced significantly, and many other types of technologies that are being developed today. The economic impact for this region is huge. I mean, it's huge. The expectation is between now and 2020, at least $20 billion, at least, and the estimates continue to go up. And we expect our projections, most recent projections, would suggest more than 30,000 new jobs. And this occurs in an area of Texas that has several counties that are some of the poorest in the entire nation. So it's important to recognize that. Water consumption nominally is on the order of 4 to 6 million gallons of water per well for hydraulic fracturing and well completion overall. Those are just rough estimates, but a general range. And projections suggest that by 2020 or 2022, we'll be looking at accessing on the order of 45,000 acre-feet to support production that's ongoing in the Eagle Ford Shale. Again, just projections, but it gives you a sense of the magnitude of the challenge and the opportunity that we face. And of course, I think many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the challenges around environmental impacts, which include possibly freshwater contamination from hydraulic fracturing, from casing failure, from produced water, which we heard earlier, and there are a number of challenges as well around air quality concerns that must be addressed as we look to the future and consider the Eagle Ford Shale really as an experiment and a model for sustainable development of these types of oil and gas reserves in the future. It's a great opportunity to really take what we've learned from many other parts of the country and to focus on what is that connection between the energy-water nexus and a very important reserve or natural resource for the United States energy future.